Hey third graders, Mr. Powell coming here at you. Hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to continue with our kindness library. We're going to be talking about a book called Sophie's Masterpiece. Let me show you the cover. Make sure you can see it. And in this book we're going to be thinking about a couple of different ideas. One of which is, suppose you were kind to someone, but they weren't kind to you. Would you keep on being nice to them if they were mean? What would be the right thing to do there? This book is going to be about a character who was kind and helpful, even when people around her did not appreciate her. The spider, as you can see on the front cover, is named Sophie. Here she is there. Title of the book is Sophie's Masterpiece, and the author is Eileen Spinelli. And a masterpiece is a great work of art. Looking at the cover, what do you think Sophie's masterpiece might be? Let's read and find out. Sophie was no ordinary house spider. Sophie was an artist. It's like she's wearing clothes. She spun webs more wondrous than anyone had ever seen. Her playmates called her incredible. Her mama was proud. Someday, they said, she's going to spin a masterpiece. You can see all these different cool webs that she's spinning. So these illustrations, what do they tell us about Sophie? What parts of her are spider-like and what parts are more human-like? Interesting question. What do you think of the webs that she spins? We're going to talk about that. When Sophie arrived at that age, when a young spider must strike out on her own, she moved to Beekman's boarding house. And there's Beekman's boarding house. Boarding house is a big house divided up into individual rooms, and different people can go in there and rent rooms and live there. The first thing she did was look around. She saw dull green walls, faded rugs, and old window shades. The place cried out for her talents. Sophie set to work. Her first project was to weave a web of curtains for Beekman's front parlor. Day after day she whizzed along, blending a golden thread of sun into her silk. You can see her there with her little blonde bob haircut. Pretty sassy. Then one day the landlady noticed her and screamed, "I'll have no spiders in my parlor!" She swatted at Sophie with a dust rag. Sophie knew when she wasn't wanted. She scampered across the wall and up the stairs into the tugboat captain's closet. Here's the landlady yelling at her. She does not look like a very friendly woman. When she finally settled down, she looked around and saw nothing but gray. Gray shirts, gray pants, gray sweaters. The captain needs a new suit, Sophie decided. Something bright, blue, like sky. She began to spin patiently. A sleeve, a collar. One day the tugboat captain caught Sophie at work. He screeched, "A spider!" Then he climbed onto the windowsill and out onto the roof. Sophie did not want anyone falling off of the roof on her account. She scuttled out of the closet, down the hall, and into the cook's bedroom slipper. So why do you think the landlady and the tugboat captain both scream when they see Sophie? There's this tugboat captain climbing out on the roof. Cook's bedroom slippers were patched and dirty. I'll spin Cook a new pair, Sophie thought, after I rest a bit. No sooner had Sophie snuggled into the toe than she was being flung to the floor. Was it an earthquake? No. It was Cook, who had shaken Sophie out. "Yuck!" scowled Cook. "Look at that ugly, disgusting spider." Sophie's feelings were hurt. With great dignity, she journeyed across the rug and under Cook's door. She made the long, long climb up the steep stairs to the third floor where a young woman lived. Wearily, Sophie slipped into the young woman's knitting basket and fell asleep. That's a long walk up those stairs when you're Sophie's size. So far, no one who lives in the boarding house appreciates her talents or her attempts at being kind to them. By this time, many spider years had passed. Sophie was older. She only had energy to spend a few small things for herself. A tiny rose-patterned case for her pillow, 8 colorful socks to keep her legs warm. But mostly, she slept. There's her pillowcase and her socks. And then I'll show you a picture of her sleeping in the knitting basket. See her on top there. Then one day the young woman discovered Sophie. Oh no, thought Sophie, close to tears. She knew she did not have the energy for any more journeys. But the young woman did not swat at Sophie with a dust rag. She did not climb on the roof. She did not say that Sophie was ugly. She simply smiled. Look at the illustration of Sophie. What's changed about her? Her hair's different. She looks a little older. And here's the young woman who did not swat Sophie away. And without disturbing Sophie in the least, the young woman picked up her needle and yarn. Sophie watched as the young woman knitted day after day. "Booties!" cried Sophie. The young woman was going to have a baby. After the booties were finished, the young woman knitted a baby sweater. Then the yarn was gone. The young woman did not have enough money to buy yarn for a baby blanket. "Never mind," the landlady told her. "There's an old brown quilt in the hall closet. Your baby can use that." Sophie had seen that quilt. It was scratchy and drab, not fit for a baby. There's the young lady knitting for her baby. Sophie knew the answer. She would have to spin a blanket herself. In her younger days, this would not have been a problem. But Sophie had grown frail and weak. The baby was due any day. Could Sophie complete the blanket in time? She climbed out of the yarn basket. She traveled to the wide windowsill. Strands of moonlight fell into the room. Excellent, she thought. I'll weave those strands into the baby's blanket. Some starlight, too. Sophie began. As she spun, new ideas came to her. She worked them into the blanket. Snippets of fragrant pine, wisps of night, old lullabies, playful snowflakes. There is Sophie on the windowsill. All right, let's see how it's going to end. Sophie spun without blinking, or eating, or sleeping. She was never more exhausted, or determined. On and on she spun. She was down to the farthest corner of the blanket when she heard the cry of the young woman's newborn baby. And there, on that farthest corner, is where Sophie wove into the blanket her very own heart. That night, as the young woman was about to cover her infant with the landlady's quilt, something on the windowsill caught her eye. It was a blanket, so soft, so beautiful as to be fit for a prince. The young woman knew this was no ordinary blanket. She placed it with love and wonderment around her sleeping baby, and went to sleep herself with her hand upon the little spider's last spinning, Sophie's masterpiece. There, see the baby with the blanket on. Beautiful. Okay. So Sophie tries to make life more pleasurable for the humans at the boarding house. And what does she do when they reject her efforts? Does she just stop? Does she leave? So some parts of this story are realistic and could really happen. What parts could really happen? What parts could most definitely not happen? So the genre of this book is a fantasy. Like Enemy Pie, it's fiction, means it's not real, didn't really happen. It's a different kind of fiction. Again, it's called a fantasy. Why do you think Sophie continues trying to be kind to these people who keep rejecting all of her efforts. And we also want to discuss Sophie's last act of kindness. What was it? Why do you think she did that last act of kindness? And when we answer these questions in small groups, we're going to use details from the story to answer them. So we're going to talk about how we feel, but we're also going to use examples from the story to answer our questions. And we're going to talk about, how did you feel at the beginning of the story when all you had seen was this, or the first couple of pages? And how do you feel now that the book is over? What changed in your feelings between the beginning of the book and the end? And we're going to also talk about how the illustrations and the way that the author used language, how did that make us feel? The illustrations definitely helped me push the book along for me and keep me interested. So again, this was another book in our kindness library. We're going to draw a picture of our own web. We're going to do a few different things. Your teacher will tell you that stuff specifically after you listen to the book. But one more time, Sophie's masterpiece. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading it to you. That's going to end our session for today. I hope you had a great time, and I will see you soon. Peace.